Maj Ralph Dekker. I work at the NATO Command and Control Center of Excellence, which obviously means, since I'm here, I will do some advertising about NATO Command and Control Center of Excellence as well. It's going to be easy. It's going to be a little movie clip that's in the Word file. Can you show that, please?
Traditionally, military command posts have existed as centralized, stovepiped institutions where a commander and their staff are physically co-located, making themselves a target. In a split second, things can change by either a kinetic force or through a non-physical disruption. Centralized command and control makes leadership vulnerable to attack, but without it, military operations become misguided and effectively useless. A dispersed command post that embraces both available and upcoming technologies can minimize and in some cases eliminate this vulnerability. Virtual and augmented reality, secure data transmission, and real-time situational awareness of the physical and digital battle space enhance a commander's C2. What has been a stovepiped organizational structure under one roof can be transformed into a general staff which promotes decentralization, connected by location-independent nodes. It enhances capabilities, catalyzes security, and can deliver a higher quality than the traditional organized C2 structure. In a volatile, uncertain, and complex environment, big data drives modern-day warfare decision-making. With the use of modern-day technologies, the processing cycle of data is quicker, safer, and of a higher quality to support the commander in decision-making. The tools and technology exist and will continue to evolve. The question is, will you?
Well, it's an easy answer for me. Yes, I will, and that's what we are doing within the center. We're providing advice to NATO. We're aiming at the operational level, meaning Brunssum and Naples. And that's the work we are doing now. To get the word more out within the center, we are doing more on e-learning, so we're going to produce this, and that's why I'm being trained here this week. Previous to this position, I was working as a J7 tracks officer within Brunssum and was involved in many exercises like Trident Javelin, Trident Jupiter, Brilliant Joust, and what have you. Meaning the J7 guy, that's the guy who doesn't know about logistics, who doesn't know about CIS, who knows nothing about finance, but is the guy who needs to orchestrate all those guys to get an exercise ready and done. And how we're going to do that, and how I did that, is with the NATO Exercise Process. So now you get to know me a little, now I want to get to know you a little. So who is working in a NATO command structure or NATO force structure? So that's about 30%. Who's not working in NATO command or NATO force structure? Ooh, that's a majority. Who's been involved in NATO exercises? Good. And who will be involved in the future? Nice, good. So the good thing is, you're the right audience because most of you will get involved with the exercise planning processes. So what I try to do, this is a course of 2 weeks, compressed into 1 week in Oberammergau, and now compressed into 1 hour. So, is it going to be full? No, definitely not. Are you an expert? No, it's just an introduction. The good thing is there are courses if you need to know more. So the aims and references introduce the general framework of the collective training and exercise in NATO. Some tips and advice. I try to especially talk to some of the logistic guys to you because all of you are in the field of logistics. And my big reference, also called my Bible for 3 years when I was working in Brunssum, that's the 75-3. Wanted to write down, if you ever need to know something more about exercises, it's all in here. This is my outline, going from introduction, landscape, the SAGE and the MTAP process, CT&E-related documents, key person and entities, key exercise documents, exercise process itself, and key takeaways. So what are those exercises? It's about training command posts with or without troops in the use of NATO tactics, techniques and procedures. Without troops, anybody familiar with that one? How we call it exercise without troops? A computer-aided exercise, yes. And this is why we do it. to ensure NATO forces maintain a high state of readiness and interoperability across the current and emerging full mission spectrum. So that's being adapted every year, but it's aiming for readiness and definitely for interoperability. Also important, obviously, for logisticians, because, well, you might want to move all to the same country, and then you have to work together with other logisticians and your host nation. Serves as the cornerstone of credible defense, deterrence, and assurance efforts. It's the only way how we can try to replicate what's going to happen or might happen in the future. This is the only time and place where we actually can exercise. We're not doing it alone as NATO. We'll use our partners as well. Partner nations, IOs, NGOs, Red Cross, whomever. And serves as a vehicle to test and validate future capabilities. So if we got a new capability in, yes, we might want to see it back in an exercise. A big one, especially for the generals, serves as a mechanism for strategic communications at political, strategic, and operational levels. Every big exercise, and especially when it's a live ex, like a Trident Juncture, you will see a lot of NATO media coming out. We are NATO, sailing ships, and soldiers fighting the opponent. So how? How are we doing that? We're applying the NATO Exercise Program in planning and control procedures. The train as you fight principle, which is between brackets, because we don't know what's going to be the next fight. So we try to think about it. And it's not us, it's on secure level who's going to think about what's the next fight going to be, how's the future going to look like. So upcoming things like the space domain, cyber domain, you will see them, and they are incorporated in the current exercises. And we're using NATO and national resources in exercises. How do we do it? It's a big question mark. 3 years within the exercise world, and it always will remain a little bit of a question mark. That's because there is not a copy of any exercise. Every exercise is different. But this is it. Easy, isn't it? Basically, what I want to show you here is there are a lot of activities prior to the Phase 3 Bravo of operations, which is the 10-day of NATO exercise. The whole sequence of events, which may be even starting up more than 2 years before the actual exercise, is needed to, in the end, have that little 10-day Phase 3 Bravo, and I will come back to that exercise. So it's a 2-year process. Will you follow this always? Yes, you will follow it almost always. Will you deviate for some exercises? Yes, you will. Exercise acronyms, or as we call them, acros. That will drive you crazy. Well, most likely you've heard more than enough acronyms already this week. So this is just a couple of more for your list. Always difficult for an Air Force guy. When I was starting working in NATO business, I met a colleague in the first couple of weeks, and he was talking to me about AAR, and I was literally like, AAR? Are we doing AAR on operational level? Because to me, it was air-to-air refueling. How does Brunson does air-to-air refueling? Do they own planes? No, it's after-action review. Oh, copy. So it will drive you crazy. You will get them in the end, however. So this is the landscape for exercises where we're working in, if we're talking about NATO exercises. So NATO HQ is trained, NEC is trained, MC, IMS, IS, all most likely already talked about this week. And I was mostly working at this level, Joint Force HQ Brunson. So the joint in purple, Marcom is already there, so this is the NATO command structure. It's the old one, I know, so I need to adapt that one for the next iteration. And these guys, yes, we do train with these guys as well. So in the time I was there, we have been working with NLC Italy, NLC Spain. We've been working with Spanish MARFOR, French MARFOR, the German JFAC and the Spanish JFAC. And I've been working with with the guys from Münster as well. The thing is, it's a lot of exercises, and the NATO force structure is all there in the exercise landscape. And this is how it looks geographically. So when you're training and planning an exercise as an exercise OPR, or if a logistic expert and one of the guys who's part of the team preparing an exercise, you will get to travel. Levels of ambition of NATO training. The JTFs, the Joint Task Force, the 4-stars in Naples and Brunsum, they train up to the major joint operation, high intensity warfare. Any idea of the scale of that one? So basically for Javelin and for Jupiter, the Jupiter was the last iteration I was part of, it meant a big fight in northern Norway and in Norway, and it meant the Baltic states were under attack as well. And then Poland had suffered some casualties. There were some fights going on in Germany, all by the opponent. It's quite a big fight, and so quite a big scenario. Aircom is responsible to do by themselves an air-heavy smaller joint operations. Marcom, a maritime heavy small joint operations. And the integrated joint task force headquarters from the NATO force structure should be able to be capable of handling a land-heavy small joint operation. On division level, in a high intensity or a low intensity pace, depending on what kind of JTF you are. That's the exercise landscape. Any questions about that one? Good. This is a bit boring, so I'll go quickly through it. So where do we find our stuff? Well, every year it's a Kerr who's giving out his sage. So he will tell us there in high-level political wording, a little bit translated to the military style, about what he wants and sees for education, training, exercise, and evaluations. It's applicable to the NATO command structure, NATO force structure, and other forces as well. He sets out his ET&E requirements to allow SecT to better schedule and resource these activities. Why is SecT here so important? SecT is a big provider of training facilities. Under SecT, you've got the Joint Force Training Command and you've got Joint Warfare Center. And those are not belonging to SHAPE, those are belonging to SecT. So there he says to basically SecT, hey, this is what I want from your training centers. It's updated annually. It's effective for ET&E planning in the upcoming year and execution in the following year and beyond. So what you will see is more focus in the last couple of years on not the non-Article 5 crisis response operations, but to the Article 5 response operations. That has been stated for a number of iterations in the SAGE. It has stated that the cyber domain is becoming more important and we should train there more. We should be more aware about high-level intensive logistic operations, because an MJO Plus is not a small operation. And especially it has some challenges, to say the least. This is structure, good. If you want to read it, Google it, it's there. MTAP, it's a little bit more into detail. So this is where you get to know a little bit more of the details about your lookout for how the actual training and exercise program will look like. It's a 5-year collective training and exercise program in direct support of SAGE. So basically it means you can see within when your headquarters will be part of the NRF package and you will see what kind of trainings you will have in the future. So all the details are therein for the next 2 years. It's ACTU programs, the exercises that will change, however, in the future. That's actually going on right now. ACT was the guys who were doing the program of the exercise that will, however, move to SHAPE. And this is a document that is utilized to deconflict all planning dates for exercises. So there's an official one, and the moment you get it, it's old. So there's an online version, that's called the electronic MTAP. So that's where you can see all the latest actual changes. So if you are going to be part of the exercise business, make sure you get an account for the eMTAP. Deconflict all planning dates for exercises as much as it can. Because there are so many exercises within NATO, you will always have conflicting dates. Quick one, isn't it? CTNA-rated documents. So where does it become interesting for our level? So strategic concept we have the NEC political guidance, the MC 403, and some other MC policies. CFAO, yes, it's worth to look at what's in there, but here we go. Now it's finally becoming a little bit more interesting. The BIAS C75-2 gives you a little bit more glare about the whole exercise training and education landscape. If you're in the exercise business, there we go. Here's the Bible, 75-3. Every exercise planner and every guy who's part of the exercise planning team will have a copy of this one, a hard copy one, and he will use it and he will tear it down in the end after 3 years of work. Is it a Bible? Yes, but for me personally, I use it as a Catholic. I read it and I used it to my best knowledge. So I wasn't living by the book. And you shouldn't live by the book because then you can't make an exercise. You should use it as what's good, what's bad. These last ones are important as well because for every exercise you need standards. And especially when you're being evaluated, you need those standards. You can't live without those standards. So those in the circles are the most important documents. You will read those, and the rest is if you're interested. Nah, that's too much detail already. Yeah, get there. So the 75-3, as already stated, the Exercise Planner's Bible. It provides direction and guidance on the planning, execution, and assessment of NATO collective training and military exercise. That's what it does. Guidance. It will guide you through the process. It won't tell you how the process will look like. It will guide you through the process. So, a little bit more into detail, because these, especially when you're working in NATO, you will see those more. So who do you have? The main actors within an exercise. The officers scheduling the exercise, conducting the exercise, directing the exercise, and most importantly, that's the guys who are going to be trained. That's the training audience. And then we obviously have other actors as well. The exercise director, the guy who actually directs the exercise. Director of evaluation, if he's there, because not every exercise is evaluated. And then we will have the supporting commands and organizations like the NCAA, like the JOLC, like the COEs, like JTF, like JFTC, like Joint Wolf Center, and so on and so on. And then this is the poor guy, the officer with the primary responsibility. I think this is a familiar term for you. He's a designated staff officer with primary responsibility for coordinating the planning, preparation, executing, and analysis of an exercise on behalf of his COM or director. So how does it work within the headquarters? Yes, we're going to do a big exercise. The officer conducting the exercise is the boss of the exercise. He's the boss of the training audience. That's the 4-star general. And then you've got this little poor OF3 who has to speak on behalf of the 4-star. Yeah, good luck. But yes, you will need to tie into your command group, and you have to make sure you've got access to your commander. It's challenging within NATO, as we all know. It's a lot of bureaucracy, because if the OF3 wants to talk to the OF8, he has to talk to the OF4, 5, 6, 7 in between as well. So make sure you plan accordingly. A little bit more in detail. The officer scheduling the exercise is taking care of the first part, so that's way ahead of the game, way of the end of the, it's about 2 years out. He's taking care of the XPEC. That's where he sets the requirements, ensures the resourcing so that we got the right people and sources available. He schedules and directs the planning, so that long process from the 2 years here to the actual event, that's what he does, he schedules it. Then he's done, basically. It's kind of an easy task. You just do the planning, set requirements, and then you're done. So within 3 months of the exercise planning process, you're good. Not totally true. But then it comes to the officer conducting the exercise. He definitely does the exercise planning with his core planning team, CPT. He uses a planning guidance, very important. He's going to create the training objectives. So what are we going to train? How are we going to train it? Does the J7 guy do that alone? No. It's going to be input from all of you. So if your logistic boss wants to train specifically, this is the time to do influence, to do big influence. He's making exercise plannings, he's making final exercise reports. So he does the detailed planning and overall execution. So he does the execution. And he does reporting, and that's the formal reporting about the exercise, so it's not just a normal reports and returns. The officer directing the exercise, he's taking care of about the exercise conduct. So we call that the exercise director. He does it with the exercise planning team. What does he make? He will give you the scenario. So he will give you the scenario modules. He will give you the country books. He will give you the road to war, the historic background, everything he will get to you. And he will give you the mail. Based on your training objectives, he will create a main event list and an incident list. So you finally can measure the training objectives. So basically what he does, he creates the conditions to allow the OC to achieve the exercise aim and the training objectives. He leads the overall execution, so he's the guy who takes care about those 10-day period. Are we still on track with all the training objectives? Do we need to redo something? Do we need to speed up, slow down? So he's the guy who's pushing the buttons then. And then we've got eval, and they're just making an eval report. Shape J7 is taking care of that mostly. And they coordinate the efforts on evaluation, analysis, and assessments, and they report to SACEUR. Any questions about key person entities? Good, the fun part. A little bit more detail. Exercise specification. It's the contract. This is basically when all the key players state their requirements, check what SAGE tells, what's in the MTAP, what is feasible, and in the end, there will be some specifications. It's about the exercise aim. It's just one aim for one exercise. Then you will have several exercise objectives, so it's just making a pyramid. Because under the exercise objectives, you will find in the next document, this one coming back in more details, training objectives. The concept, so how are we going to train? Are we going to do LiveX? Are we going to do CPX? Are we going to do vignettes? Are we going to do a tabletop exercise? All kinds of things that you can see back in the exercise specifications. Who's going to be the host nation? If there's one needed. So for Trident Jupiter, for Trident Juncture, it was Norway. So you will make sure that Norway is aware and that they already influence here the expect what can be done and what definitely can't be done within the country. Participation requirement, what do we need to make the exercise a success? And then who's going to be the OCE, the ODE, the Derival, and Derival is not always needed, like I already said. And then the draft milestone schedule, so the big events, the main planning conference, the initial planning conference, and the final planning conference, the FCC. The OSE is done. So from that moment on, so this is done by SECT, will be done by SHAPE. The only thing he has to do is check if everybody lives up to the contract. So now it's going to the OC. He's going to make the exercise plan. Not the 4-star himself, no, it was this poor guy, or one of my colleagues. Detailing the how to the what, given by the OSE and SXPEC. So going into all kinds of details, requirements, responsibilities, and a schedule of activities. I'm going to think about scenario modules. So I'm going to talk to the training center, to Joint Warfare Center. Hey guys, when your scenario modules will be provided? Simulation support when needed, especially when it's a KEX exercise. Real life support, yes. Even in a KEX exercise, we need a lot of real life support. Communications, that's a big one. You need your computers as well. The exercise control, exercise analysis, and reports. And this is basically a final exercise report. Is it important? Yes. Is there always a lot of delay on it? Yes, because the exercise is done. So that's how it works, doesn't it? Exercise done, and then you, as a poor guy, need to chase everybody. Hey guys, we need to learn something from this as well, because it's going into the fair. So it's about the comments, conclusion, recommendations about what could be improved within NATO. Key lessons learned and lessons identified are in there. Documents and the process. So we got stages and phases, and this will confuse you all the way through your tour within NATO, I can promise you that. So we got 4 stages of the exercise process. Specification development, where you do the analysis and design. Planning product development, that's the big part. CT&E conduct, which is basically the exercise itself. And then analysis and reporting, which is quite easy. And here we go to the confusion. So CT&E conduct will have 4 phases: foundation training, crisis response planning, execution, and assessment. Foundation training. Anybody any idea what foundation training is? It's basically that everybody on his own position has got the right courses already and is trained for his job. Crisis response planning. Anybody familiar with crisis response planning? Good. So after the crisis response planning, there will be an O plan, and that's been the crisis response planning phase will be done by the J5 guys within the joint headquarters. Execution, that's the fun part. That's the actual exercise when we move to wherever and do our things and have the party. And the assessment is the quick one. So 4 phases, and yes, some more detail. Phase 1 is not, so it's the internal training that's done within your division, within your branch. You have an academic seminar. Academic seminar is important. It will happen half a year, 4 months before the exercise itself, usually before the operational CRP or strategic CRP. This is the first time that the full training audience will see something about the exercise. You've been working on it for already 1.5 years. And this is the first event that they will see, oh, so we're going to do an exercise. So in the academic seminar, the first things about the scenario will be laid down. You will get some updates about your component commands. It's basically foundation, so this is what's going to happen. Key leaders are doing the same. So finally, you got the attention of the generals and the OF5s and above. And they will tell, and you're going to tell them the same. Hey guys, we have an exercise, and this is a scenario. And this is what we're going to do training, and we're going to have some highlights here, here, and there, and that's actually where you're going to be. Difference between academic seminar and key leader training is actually quite easy. Academic seminar is, as it's used, and depends on wherever you work, OF4 and below, full briefings like this, one way. Key leader training, same briefings, however, more room for discussions. Especially when you talk about, for instance, you can have those component commanders, including their commander, talking about battle space management, logistic issues, whatever you come up with. This is the time that the key leaders from different components, different headquarters get to know each other and discuss about subjects that will return in the exercise itself. Battle staff training. Battle staff training usually planned a couple of weeks, not more than a month, away for the actual exercise. It's the dry run. It's just getting to know everybody, procedures. So how does the boards and working groups work, and where you have to be during the exercise itself. Crisis response planning, it's a task from J5, always followed after the Bravo, 1 Bravo or 1 Charlie. Not always we do the crisis response planning. Sometimes we just reuse old products. Good, let them have it. And then you go to the execution. So basically you got a 3 Alpha, 3 Bravo. This one is for you most likely interesting. And what you tend to see is that the 3 Alpha comes back as a separate exercise. There are exercises within NATO just focusing on the 3 Alpha, and we call them the Brilliant Jump series, or better to be said, the Noble Jump and the Brilliant Jump. So rapid deployment of the VGTF troops into wherever. I've been to Brilliant Jump, then we went to Norway. And after that, we followed on by the next exercise. Or it could be about an operation already ongoing. And that might be that you train a specific time frame of the operation. Might be G plus 80, might be G plus 200, or whatever. But it's already been laid out way ahead what you're going to train during the XPEC development. This is another way of showing you, and basically recapping what I just said. Specification development, OSE-led, based on the MTEP. The main event for this one is the Exercise Specification Conference. This is where you have all the high commanders in one room and say to each other, yes, this is what we want to train, this is what we want to do. In 1.5 years, good luck there, getting the attention from the commanders and having it right. You might see some changeover of commanders, good luck there. Planning a product development, this is the long run. It's OCE-led, it's based on the XPEC. It will give you the exercise instructions. Main events, initial planning conference, main planning conference. It used to be the final planning conference, but then we realized if you're doing planning at final stage, you're too late, so we now call it a final coordination conference, so it's only about the small bits and pieces. Main deliverables, training objectives. Yes, you need to have your training objectives. You will see there the OC exercise planning guidance, who's going to do what, when, how does the BST look like, when are we going to play it, who's going to play it, are we going to do it all together or the separate training audiences. Scenario, when will the scenarios be provided, and when will we do the scripting. And then the conduct itself. This is where the full audience, training audience, is involved. So the foundation training, academics, key leader training, better staff training, crisis response planning, the strategic one and the operational one, execution, either being preceded by the RSOM, and operations, and then the assessment. Analysis and reporting, the main event there is the post-exercise discussion, that's PXD. That's basically when the generals are talking to each other and say what a great success it was and what we should improve within NATO. And you can read those improvements back in more detail, more granularity in the final exercise report. So, this is the last view of the process. Easy, isn't it? So, but top tip here, if you're going to be involved in more than just a training audience, so if you're involved in making training objectives, if you're going to be your representative from your J4 division, and you have to work to create the exercise, print this one out, hang it behind your back on your wall in your office. And after 3 years, you will understand it. This is just a little warning. What's the warning? This 2-year process for one exercise is not the only exercise that's being created within your headquarters. No, there are multiple ones. There's always multiple ones. You're working with some NRF components for an exercise. You're working for your own evaluation. You're working for the brilliant jump exercise. Then you might have some exercises where you are there just to provide a high con, and higher control. For instance, Anaconda was there a good example for, where Brunson was just providing a high con. However, you had to do all those events, so the headquarters might be right busy. Basically, meaning if you're taking part, if you're taking care of this part, make sure you talk to the colleague of this part. Because you always need the same people. It's the thing within NATO. You always have too little people to do too much work. Five C rule. Little hint. There's a 6. Phase 3 Bravo. That's the actual exercise itself. The 10 days of fun in wherever country, with whatever kind of good bars, and where you see a lot of people getting frustrated or being enthusiastic or over-enthusiastic. But before that happens, you have a big iceberg. It's more than 19%. Below the stage 1, 2, 3, or 4, most people will only see the 3 Bravo. Keep that into mind when you're involved in that one. Coordinate. Not only within your division, but especially with your subordinate commands, with your higher command, and with the guys from the other divisions. How do you coordinate, by the way? It's not shooting emails, definitely not only shooting emails. It's walking around in your headquarters. Wear those souls off, go talk to people, invest in time in people, see who the slackers are and see who are the achievers. Get to know your people, and you really need to know them. That was the best advice my Norwegian boss gave me. I don't want you here at your desk, I just want you walking around the headquarters. Cooperate. Yes, you can't win them all. So if your boss, as J4 boss or JLSG boss says, I want this exercise only to be about logistics, oh, good luck. You won't make it. So cooperate. See where's the room for improvement, and cooperate also with all your co-workers who in the end try to make this into a success. Get your commanders' involvement, invest in their relations as well. How does it work? It works by using the XOs of those commanders, the military assistants, the personal assistants. They're your quick way to get to the command group. Does it work? Yes, it works. But it needs a lot of time of investment. If you're preparing one of the big planning conferences, you need to make sure you got speaking time beforehand, that you can listen to the commander's IDs, of the command group IDs, so you can bring it to the main planning conference. You're speaking on his behalf. And brief him back afterwards. So make sure you always plan, do a lot of planning, and do it on time, because commanders are always away, TDYing or whatever. It works, it's fun. Some generals are great to work with, some are just total, yeah, well, whatever. You get the point. The good thing is you're being recognized within the command group as well, if you're doing a good job. So, which is okay and not okay. So when I was working in Brunson, everybody in the command group knew me by my first name, which is kind of hard sometimes, because they immediately called you as well. Compromise. Again, it's about cooperating as well, compromising. You can't always get what you want. And that's how it is. Common sense. Does it get lost a lot of times? Yes, it does get lost a lot of times. Everybody thinks that everything is important. Well, it isn't. Common sense also means, hey, somebody has done this task before you. Somebody has been doing your job before you. Don't go invent the wheel yourself. Reuse products. Ask your colleagues. They might have used some common sense in the past, so talk to them. Anybody this one? know? If you're in the planning process, and it's a long planning process, after 2 years, you will only have those 10 days. In those 2 years, you need to have some inputs. So, in those 2 years, if you got nothing in, nothing will come out. Garbage in is garbage out. Thank you, you get it, yes. And that's basically how it is. So it's hard, it's a long process, but make sure you give your inputs way before the exercise actually happens. Key takeaways. Tracks is not a J7 business, it's our business. If you want to train logistics, you do it through exercises. How can you influence the exercises? Be there from the beginning. Ask what you want from your boss. Think by yourself what you want in an exercise. I, as a J7 guy, do know a little bit about logistics. In 3 years, I learned a little bit more, but what JLSG exactly does and how those processes work, I don't know. You guys are the SME. I'm going to ask you those questions. Have the mandate. Don't come up on a meeting and say, yeah, don't know if we want to do a big theatrical logistic base 1 or 2. You should. Walk, talk, and communicate. And that's basically how it is. You can't communicate enough. Well, you can, because then you are boring people. But communication is important. Sitting behind your desk won't get your exercise done. It won't get your logistics done either. That's kind of easy. Don't talk problems. Talk about the impact of the challenge. What do I mean here? If you're going to tell me what your big logistic issue is, I wouldn't know. I can't see the impact. So tell me, if you're telling me the main supply route is closed, then I would say, oh, all right, copy. So what? Tell me what is the impact. So then you will tell me, hey, the main supply road is closed. It will be open for 2 days. My advice would be to do a little bit more low down, whatever on operation, whatever. That's your advice. So tell me the impact of your challenge. Accept or deal with the challenges. Is everything real in exercises? No, but it's as realistic as it can. And exercises are fun, and they are. And even the exercise planning process is fun. You get to travel around, you get to meet a lot of people. I tell you from experience, I don't know, you forget the part and you keep the memories of the fun part. And it's the only way NATO provides, it's not the only way, but it's the biggest way of providing ground to improve NATO, improve not only NATO, but thinking also about the future, thinking about logistics, thinking about whatever. So if you invest in your exercise, you will be better. Quick one, isn't it? I'm within time. Questions? Shoot. And thank you for your attention.